Hello and welcome to another lesson on nutrition. So today we're going to be looking at the macronutrient, and hopefully you remember that term from last week. Fat. Hopefully you remember that macronutrients are nutrients that are needed in large amounts, such as your protein, your fat and your carbohydrates. So last week we looked at protein. So this is just a little protein recap. Feel free to write it down or feel free to just do it in your head. So I want you to pause the video here and complete these 8 questions. So if we hit pause. Okay, I'm going to very quickly go over them. So number 1, state one function of protein. Hopefully you remember that the word function means its definition is what does something do in our body. So what does protein do for our body? Well, it helps us grow. It is needed for the repair of body cells. It's needed for the repair of muscle cells. Number 2, what are proteins made up of? Hopefully you remember that they're made up of amino acids. Number 3, what are the 2 types of amino acids? Hopefully you remember that amino acids can be essential and amino acids can be non-essential. I'm just going to explain that a little bit further just to remind you. Remember that the essential amino acids need to be obtained from our diet and the non-essential amino acids can be made by the body. Number 4, what does HBV stand for? HBV stands for high biological value. Number 5, what does LBV stand for? It stands for low biological value. Number 6, name an HBV food source. Now hopefully remember from the last lesson that HBV food sources are generally animal sources such as your chicken, your fish, your eggs, your cheese, your milk, and remember the exception, corn, tofu, mycoprotein. Okay, and they're high biological value because they contain all of the essential amino acids. Number 7, name an LBV food source. And again, hopefully you remember from last week that an LBV food source is a plant source, such as your nuts, your seeds, your legumes. And they are missing one or more of the essential amino acids. And number 8, describe the term complementary proteins, giving an example. Hopefully remember that complementary proteins is when you combine 2 low biological value protein foods, therefore 2 foods that are missing 2 different essential amino acids, and you combine them together in the same meal. For example, beans on toast. So today we're going to look at fat. This is your driving question, so if we can write this down. The driving question, is all fat bad for your diet? So we're going to find out a little bit more about that. So firstly, we need to write this down. The functions of fat, okay? So what does fat do for our body? Well, fat provides us with energy. 1 gram of fat will provide us with 9 kilocalories of energy. It provides us with insulation and body warmth. It protects our vital organs such as our heart, our liver, our kidneys and our lungs. It acts as a carrier for the fat-soluble vitamins, and they are vitamins A, D, E and K. It's very important for hormone production, and it contains essential fatty acids which are important for brain function. So that is what fat does in the body. Now its main function is energy, followed by insulation, followed by protecting vital organs. So we're going to watch this little video that's going to look at what is fat.
Olive oil is 100% fat. There's nothing else in it. Pancake mix, on the other hand, is only about 11% fat. And yet, olive oil is good for you, and pancake mix is not. Why is that? As it turns out, the amount of fat we eat doesn't impact our weight or our cholesterol or our risk of heart disease nearly as much as what kind of fat we eat. But let's back up. What is fat? If we were to zoom in on a salmon, which is a fatty fish, past the organs, past the tissues, into the cells, we would see that the stuff we call fat is actually made up of molecules called triglycerides, and they are not all alike. Here's one example. Those 3 carbons on the left, that's glycerol. Now you can think of that as the backbone that holds the rest of the molecule together. The 3 long chains on the right are called fatty acids, and it's subtle differences in the structures of these chains that determine whether a fat is, let's say, solid or liquid, whether or not it goes rancid quickly, and Most importantly, how good or how bad it is for you. Let's take a look at some of these differences. One is length. Fatty acids can be short or long. Another, more important difference is the type of bond between the carbon atoms. Some fatty acids have only single bonds. Others have both single and double bonds. Fatty acids with only single bonds are called saturated, and those with one or more double bonds are called unsaturated. Now, most unsaturated fats are good for you, while saturated fats are bad for you in excess. For saturated fats, the story pretty much ends there, but not for unsaturated fats. The double bonds in these molecules have kind of a weird property. They're rigid. So that means that there are two ways to arrange every double bond. The first is like this, where both hydrogens are on the same side and both carbons are on the same side. The second way is like this. Now the hydrogens and carbons are on opposite sides of the double bond. Now, even though both of these molecules are made up of exactly the same building blocks, they are two completely different substances and they behave completely differently inside of us. The configuration on the left is called cis, which you've probably never heard of. The one on the right is called trans, and you probably have heard of trans fats before. They don't go rancid, they're more stable during deep frying, and they can change the texture of foods in ways that other fats just can't. They're also terrible for your health, by far worse than saturated fat, even though technically they're a type of unsaturated fat. Now, I know that seems crazy, but your body doesn't care what a molecule looks like on paper. All that matters is the 3D shape, where the molecule fits, where it doesn't, and what pathways it interferes with. So how do you know if a food has trans fat in it? Well, the only sure way to know is if you see the words partially hydrogenated in the ingredients list. Don't let nutrition labels or advertising fool you. The FDA allows manufacturers to claim that their products contain, quote, 0 grams of trans fat, even if they actually have up to half a gram per serving. But there are no hard and fast rules about how small a serving can be, and that means you'll have to rely on seeing those key words, partially hydrogenated, because that's how trans fats are made, by partially hydrogenating unsaturated fats. So let's go back to our olive oil and pancake mix from before. Olive oil is 100% fat. Pancake mix is only 11% fat. But olive oil is mostly unsaturated fat, and it has no trans fat at all. On the other hand, more than half the fat in pancake mix is either saturated or trans fat. And so even though olive oil has 10 times as much fat as pancake mix, it's healthy for you, whereas pancake mix is not. Now, I'm not trying to pick on pancake mix. There are lots of foods with this type of fat profile. The point is this. It's not how much fat you eat, it's what kind of fat. And what makes a particular fat healthy or unhealthy is its shape.
Okay, so I know that video is very scientific, but hopefully what you gathered from that is that in terms of where fat comes from, it comes from a variety of different sources. So hopefully you picked up on keywords such as saturated, unsaturated, trans, okay? They're all different types of fat. Some of them are good for our body, some of them are bad for our body, and that's what we're going to focus on next. So this is something that I want you to do. I want you in your books to draw out a table like this, or you can do it in whatever format that you wish. These are the 4 different types of fat. You've got saturated fat, okay? You've got your trans fats, you've got your monounsaturated fats, and your polyunsaturated fats. I want you to research, where do these fats come from? So what sources of fat? And are they healthy or unhealthy, and why? Okay, now a really good website that's going to help you to get information, which unfortunately is hidden by all these little tabs at the bottom, is the British Heart Foundation. Okay, this is the website here. This is what it looks like. It says Fats Explained. If you scroll down, you'll see that they've got 4 different types of fats: mono, polysaturated, and trans. They will explain whether it's healthy or unhealthy, and they will tell you the sources. So I want you to put the information from the website into the information in the table, but feel free to research other websites as well. So that is something I want you to do. So if you pause the video here and complete that task. Okay, cholesterol is highly linked with fat as well. And there are 2 different types of cholesterol, okay? You've got your low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, or your LDL, and you've got your high-density lipoprotein cholesterol, which is called HDL. Now, LDL cholesterol is bad for you. Okay, it is not good. And that's because it causes a build-up of plaque in the arteries as such, and that's called atherosclerosis. So if you look at this little picture down here, you can see, just where I'm moving my arrow, that is the build-up of fat or plaque in your artery on both sides. Therefore, it affects the blood flow throughout. Now, this leads to coronary heart disease, and if it gets to a point where the plaque builds up to the point where blood cannot go through, this is what causes a heart attack and could potentially lead to death. Now, LDL cholesterol is very much present, or it rises in your body when you eat fat that is bad for you. Okay, so if you're eating your things like your cakes, your biscuits, things that are heavy in saturated fat and trans fats, they will cause a rise in your LDL cholesterol in your body, causing atherosclerosis to happen. On the other hand, your HDL cholesterol is your good cholesterol, and the reason it's good is that it carries cholesterol from other parts of the body to the liver. Okay, therefore the liver processes this cholesterol out of the body. So it's good because it removes it from this state here. And your high density lipoprotein cholesterol will be raised if you eat good fats, such as fats from monounsaturated sources and polyunsaturated sources. Fats can also be visible and invisible, okay? Visible fats are the ones you can see, okay? Such as your margarine, your butter, and visible fat on meat. Your invisible fats are the ones that are in products, the products that we love, okay, such as milk, cheese, biscuits, donuts, everything that we all want to get our hands on at all times. So I should have said there, if you could jot down these 2 slides, that would be very helpful in your book. So if you pause the video here on this slide on cholesterol, and you pause the video here on the slide on visible fats and invisible fats. And lastly, excess of fat. What does too much fat lead to? We all know that too much fat leads to obesity, okay? And obesity is linked to so many different conditions such as heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, different cancers, high cholesterol, and it can be really, really, really detrimental to health. And in the UK, we do not suffer from a deficiency of fat, okay? We are a nation that loves to eat. So that is a little nutshell of fat. So just to sum it up, we're going to watch the GCSE pod on fat. So actually, forgot to mention, jot down this slide first. Okay, so jot down this slide on the excess of fat first.
In this pod, we look at saturated and unsaturated fats. Fat is a macronutrient, meaning it is needed in large amounts in the diet.
Lipid is the term we use to refer to fats and oils. Fat is solid at room temperature, but oil is liquid at room temperature. Fat is necessary for a healthy diet. It provides a primary source of energy, forms an insulating layer on our bodies that keeps us warm, surrounds and protects vital organs, and allows for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. This includes vitamins A, D, and E. On a simpler level, fat also provides nice texture and flavor to a variety of different foods.
Eating too little fat can decrease the amount of good cholesterol within the blood. This increases the chances of cardiovascular problems. It can also lead to vitamin deficiencies among the fat-soluble vitamins. Eating too much fat leads to the excess fat being stored as body fat. It's important to have a layer of body fat, though too much can lead to obesity. Many health problems are associated with obesity, including higher risk of stroke, type 2 diabetes, and coronary heart disease.
Fat provides a lot more energy per gram than protein or carbohydrates. A single gram of fat provides the body with roughly 9 kilocalories of energy compared with 4 kcal for carbohydrates and protein.
Fat is made up from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which together form fatty acids and glycerol. Depending on the way these atoms are arranged, we can be left with saturated or unsaturated fatty acids. In general, you'll find saturated fats in animal sources. Examples of foods with high levels of saturated fats include butter, cheese, cream, and processed meats, such as sausages and bacon. Some plant food sources also contain high saturated fats, including palm and coconut oil.
Foods with high level of saturated fats contain high levels of cholesterol, the natural fat manufactured in the liver. This is a risk because cholesterol can build up fatty deposits in major arteries and around the major organs. This can lead to coronary heart failure.
Trans fatty acids are produced when hydrogen is added to vegetable oils using a process called hydrogenation. This changes liquid fat into a solid form and shifts unsaturated fats to saturated. Though this has all of the pitfalls associated with saturated fat consumption, it is also great for improving storage life and the texture of the product.
Unsaturated fats typically come from plant and fish sources. There are two different types of unsaturated fat: monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fats are soft at room temperature. They're also healthier for you, as they can lower LDL cholesterol, which is bad for the body, and maintain the levels of HDL cholesterol, which is good for the body. You'll find monounsaturated fats in avocados, almonds, olive oil, and rapeseed oil.
Polyunsaturated fats are usually in liquid or incredibly soft form when stored at room temperature. They can help to remove LDL cholesterol from the body. There are two main types of polyunsaturated fat, omega-3 and omega-6. You'll find omega-3 in trout, salmon, and sardines. It helps to protect the heart. You'll find omega-6 in corn, rapeseed, and sunflower oil. It helps to lower blood cholesterol.
It's recommended that an adult eats less than 70 grams of fat per day. However, nutritionists also recognize that this figure should be smaller for saturated fats, which have stronger correlations to health issues. For this reason, an adult should not exceed 20 grams of saturated fat per day.
In cooking and food preparation, fat has a multitude of purposes. You can use it to spread on bread in the form of butter or margarine. You can add color and flavor to baked goods. You can use it to oil baking tins, create emulsions, and more. Remember to consider the valuable role of fat in cooking.
Oh, we're not going on to the next one just yet. All right, so hopefully you have gained a better knowledge of fat today in terms of its function in the body, in terms of the different types, for example, the saturated, the monounsaturated, the polyunsaturated, the trans. Hopefully you have learned a little bit about how fat can impact our cholesterol. So obviously bad fats raise our LDL cholesterol and our good fats will raise our HDL cholesterol. And what the effects of this can be on our body, for example, having an excess leading to obesity and all of the conditions related to obesity. So hopefully you've gained some knowledge, hopefully you've got all the notes jotted down, and there should be a quiz, obviously if you're watching this in the right week, on Show My Homework for you to complete. So please go do that now. So I hope you have a lovely day and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.